Rio class. Promised you wouldn't have to wait too long. So here is the next chapter of Wonder, and it's called First Day Jitters. Okay, so I admit that the first day of school I was so nervous that the butterflies in my stomach were more like pigeons flying around my insides. Mum and Dad were probably a little nervous too, but they acted all excited for me, taking pictures of me and Via before we left the house, since it was Via's first day of school too. Up until a few days before, we still weren't sure that I'd be going to school at all. After my tour of the school, Mum and Dad had reversed sides on whether I should go or not. Mum was now the one saying I shouldn't go, and Dad was saying that I should. Dad had told me he was really proud of how I'd handled myself with the Julian situation, and that I was turning into quite the strong young man. And I heard him tell Mum that he now thought she'd been right all along, but Mum, I could tell, wasn't so sure anymore. When Dad told her that he and Via wanted to walk me to school today too, since it was on the right way to the subway station, Mum seemed relieved that we'd all be going together, and I guess that I was too. Even though Beecher Prep is just a few blocks from our house, I've been on that block a couple of times before. In general, I tried to avoid blocks where there are lots of kids roaming around. On our block, everyone knows me, and I know everybody. I know every brick and every tree trunk and every crack in the sidewalk. I know Mrs. Grimaldi, the lady always sitting by her window, the old guy who walks up and down the street whistling like a bird. I know the deli on the corner where Mum gets her bagels, and the waitress in the coffee shop who always calls me honey and gives me lollipops whenever they see me. I love my neighbourhood of North River Heights, which is why it was strange to be walking down these blocks, feeling like it was all new to me. Amesford Avenue, a street that I've been down a million times, looked totally different for some reason, full of people I never saw before, waiting for buses, pushing strollers. We crossed Amesford Street, turned up Heights Place. Via walked next to me like she usually does, and Mum and Dad were behind us. As soon as we turned the corner, we saw all the kids in front of the school. Hundreds of them, talking to each other in little groups, laughing or standing with their parents who were talking about other parents. I kept my head way down. Everyone's just as nervous as you are, said Via in my ear. Just remember that this is everyone's first day of school, okay? Mr. Tushman was greeting students and parents in front of the school entrance. I have to admit, so far, nothing had happened. I didn't catch anyone staring at me or even notice me. Only once did I look up to see some girls looking my way and whispering with their hands curled over their mouths. But they looked away when they saw me notice them. We reached the front entrance. Okay, so this is it, big boy, said Dad, patting his hands on top of my shoulders. Have a great first day. I love you, said Via, giving me a big hug and a kiss. You too, I said. I love you, Augie, said Dad, hugging me. Bye. Then Mum hugged me, but I could tell she was about to cry, which would have totally embarrassed me, so I just gave her a fast, hard hug, turned and disappeared into school. The next chapter is called Locks. I went straight to room 103 on the 3rd floor. Now I was glad that I'd gone in on that tour because I knew exactly where to go. I didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. I went inside the classroom and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all of the kids stared and started sitting in different desks. The desks were in half a circle facing the chalkboard, so I chose the desk in the middle towards the back, which I thought would make it harder for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head down, just looking up enough under my bangs to see everyone's feet. As the desk started to fill up, I did notice that no one sat next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me, then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. Hey, August! It was Charlotte, giving me a little wave. She sat down at a desk and right at the front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit way up at the front of the class, I don't know. Hey, I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting down next to me. It was Jack Will. What's up? He said, nodding at me. Hey, Jack, I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wished that I hadn't done because it felt so uncool. Okay, kids, okay, everybody settle down, said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name Miss Petosa on the chalkboard. Everybody find a seat, please. Come in, she said to a couple of kids who were just walking into the room. There's a seat there, right there. She hadn't noticed me yet. Now, the first thing I want everyone to do is stop talking and... She noticed me. Put your backpacks down and quieten down. She'd only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. I'm going to take attendance and then do the seating chart, she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk, next to where 3 neat rows of accordion file folders. When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination lock, which you should not try and open until I tell you to. Your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some lockers are not right outside this class but down the hall, and before anyone thinks of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you can't switch locks. If there's a time at the end of this period, then we're all going to go get to know each other a little better, okay? Okay. She picked up the clipboard on her desk and started reading the names aloud. Okay, so, Julian, she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said, here, at the same time. Hi, Julian, she said, making a note on her seating chart. She picked up the first folder and handed it out to him. Come pick it up, she said, kind of no nonsense. He got up and took it from her. Alexander, she handed the folder to each kid and read off their names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk a few seats away. When she called the name of one of them, a big kid named Henry, who was already looked like a teenager, she said, Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you go and take that seat, okay? She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him directly, I could tell that Henry did not want to move next to me, just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor as he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack up really high on the side of the desk, so it was kind of a wall in between me and him. Maya, Miss Petosa was saying. Here, a girl about 4 desks down from me. Miles, here, said the kid that had been sitting next to where Henry was sitting. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot Henry a poor you look. August Pullman, said Miss Petosa. Here, I said quietly, raising my hand a bit. Hi, August, she said, smiling at me very, very nicely. And when I got up to get my folder, I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into my back for the few seconds that I stood in front of the class. And everybody looked down when I walked back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyway, because I've used them on my bike. Henry kept on trying to open his lock but couldn't do it. He was getting frustrated and kind of cursing under his breath. Miss Petosa called out the next few names. The last name was Jack Will. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, okay, everyone write your combinations down somewhere safe so that you don't forget, okay? But if you do forget, which happens at least 3 or 4 times, please go and ask Mrs. Garcia because she has the list of all the combination numbers. Now go ahead, take your locks out of your folders and spend a couple of minutes practicing how to open them. Although I know some of you went ahead and did that anyway. She was straight away looking at Henry when she said that. And in the meantime, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself. Then you guys can tell me a little something about yourselves. And we'll get to know each other. Sound good? Good. She smiled at everyone, though I felt that she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Mrs. Garcia's smile. It was a normal smile. She meant it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were supposed to look like. I guess I thought she'd look like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, the old lady with a big bun on top of her head. But, in fact, she looked exactly like Mothma from Star Wars. I'm sure someone can correct me on that name. From Star Wars in episode 4. Haircut kind of like a boy's and a big white shirt kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock to open and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, he hadn't put the backpack between us. I most definitely would have offered to help him. The next chapter is Around the Room, and we're going to save it for next time. If you've got the book at home, make sure that you can read on, or you can read along with us when we're reading. So I'll speak to you soon, Rio, and hopefully I'll see you soon too.